Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 633. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean with Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying, has been rubbing his feet on the carpet all week in hopes that the jolt will give him surge-like powers. So says the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Aquamen #1, the brand new series, and we're going to check in with The Flash with issue number 779. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, we have Aquaman, The Becoming, the trade paper. 50% off, only $9.99. Plus, we also have a really cool Flash miniseries. It's a 3-part series. Issue 1 is out right now. And this is actually based on the Flash movie universe. So 40% off, issue 1, only $3.59. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I always check out the top sellers to see if there's any books that I've been missing. It's great to see what people are latching onto. So over from the DC end, they've got the Flintstones Deluxe Edition hardcover. This is $49.99 regularly. It's 42% off, only $28.99. Milestone Compendium, Volume 1 trade paperback. This is a $59.99 book, 42% off, only $34.79. We're talking about The Flash on this episode. The Flash by Jeff Johns Omnibus Volume 3 hardcover. This is a $100 hardcover, 42% off, only $57.99. If you've missed any of these books or any others that you've been looking for, In Stock Trades is your place to go to find them in stock and at a discount. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segula, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the books we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Jim, why don't we jump right into this, because you and I just started talking about it as we started recording. Comixology, obviously the big changes with it had merged with Amazon a long time ago, obviously, but just this big changeover now with the app being a new version of the app and then the storefront being completely different. It was jarring, downright jarring.
Big time.
We're a week later since our last recording. Where are you at now with how the Comixology transition's going?
Well, I'll tell you, I still prefer the original Comixology versus Amazology. And but again, you got to learn, you got to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And one of the things that I've started doing is, one, all my books did come over, so that's very good. I'm very happy. But then when they came over, I had this massive volume of stuff that I had used I'd used the Comixology before to filter stuff down, so I had it nice and easy to find stuff that I wanted to read. I couldn't figure that out. So what I started doing was going through the books and marking down everything as read, because I had a lot of stuff that I had read before got remarked as unread, and some of it even got remarked as new. And I'm like, I read that years ago. Why is it thinking I couldn't get that? So I spent a couple hours going through and marking everything as read, and then identifying what is actually truly is unread. But then I started using the download function and downloading stuff to iZilla, and there's that filter in the upper left-hand corner where you select just the downloaded stuff. And I started using that as a way to identify what is going to be on my reading list now. So I've got a bunch of books in the filter under download. And that's how I know what to read, what I'm going to read. Now, I'm still working on the purchases. This week's purchases were a little bit, what am I doing? I'm still trying to get the groove of that. And one of the things it does that instant purchase now, which I didn't like in Comixology. I like sending stuff to the shopping cart, having everything sit in the shopping cart, make a final decision. Yes, I want to buy that. No, I don't want to buy that. And it's that functionality is gone. That was something that Comixology initially said, hey, you could do this. And I said, no, thank you. I like the shopping cart. So getting used to that, click on it and it's purchased kind of deal. So I've got to watch my impulse shopping because I big time impulse buying on comic books. So I'm like, ooh, that looks good. Click. Oh, dang, I just bought that. I shouldn't have bought that. But it is something that, starting to get the understanding and a little bit more comfort with it. Amazology is not the same as Comixology. But again, this is the first version of it. Hopefully they'll make some other modifications and, still organizing the comics on the website. I'm having a lot of issues with because the same filters I can do on iZilla, I can't do on the website, or I haven't figured out how to do them if they're available. Because right now iZilla breaks them down. I've got all the books. Then you filter in. I click on the book and I get the the display of the different titles. The oldest, most recent to young, oldest to youngest. Kind of however I want that set up, and I've got all that on the website. It just lists every single book individual issue. So, Action Comics 1, Action Comics 2, like that, and just like that. And it doesn't group all the Action Comics together. And then I click on the Action Comics that I want. So I'm still trying to work on that on the website, the organization of the website. But things are better this week than they were last week. There's still issues. I'm still dealing with stuff. But it does look better.
I think the biggest problem is it's a jarring change. I think the functionality to do most of what we all did before is actually there. I mentioned terminology last week, and I think that's the biggest change. I've been through a number of app transitions, and software transitions in my life, and I'm a bigger fan of when companies give you like the ability to use the legacy version or the legacy layout for a certain amount of time before transitioning you over, so you can try it, if that makes any sense, like ease into the transition. To your point about the downloading, I think it's why our experience was slightly different last week, where you were in a much worse place than I was. I typically download. So that ability to filter by download was something that I was naturally doing already before. So it was funny when you mentioned that this week. I'm like, I didn't even think of that. It's like I download because I like having it on the device, because there'll be times like today, for example, we're going to my father-in-law's birthday party. Well, it's a good 40-minute drive. I can read a comic or two on the way, depending, on the nature of the depth of the comic. And I usually bring my iPad because my wife drives in those cases. So I actually really enjoy it. I'm like, drive along and, I'll do that. It's usually I get through a good comic and start a second one, and then I can read, I usually get about 3 done in that trip. And I really enjoy it, actually. It's kind of a nice little pleasant, relaxing ride. Comixology, this change is just, it's an interesting one. I'm not as, like last week I was really unhappy. This week, it's like I'm back to reading, I'm getting all my books, everything's fine. The website you mentioned, I'm an Amazon user, like regularly. The one thing I do like is the recommendations now do include some books and things that wouldn't traditionally have been connected, because like a DC related book or something like that, or a comic related book that is genuinely related to the product that I'm downloading. So I like that, being able to know that, hey, if you liked this, you'd probably like this. There's almost like an extra step or two to find the things the way that you did before. Like even the new releases aren't sorted, and I haven't found out how to sort them yet, if there is a way, and there probably is, but I can't sort them by company. Like new releases, I liked shopping by company. Have you been able to see new releases by company when you've been?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. The purchasing is still, I'm still trying to figure that out. I was able to buy this week's comics, but it was a struggle. And, again, like with the recommendations, and I really do think, because I'm not Amazon Prime, I think I'm looking at things differently than you're looking at it. I think you get more options, and and it's funny. I've been toying with the idea of becoming a Prime member, and I'm also looking at the Comixology Unlimited member and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I may do that. I don't know yet, and it's one of those things where I'm still debating on it. So I don't know.
What I don't know now is, if you're a Prime member, does that make you an unlimited member? And I guess I have to research that some more, because I did unlimited before, because what ends up happening with unlimited is you get a discount. So I buy enough through Comixology that it's worth the discount. But you also get access to the Comixology originals. Like, you just download them. You don't have to pay for them.
Yeah.
And then there's a ton of legacy titles that are available to download. So it's well worth the cost for Comixology Unlimited. I find I use it more for the discount than anything else, because for me, I like the ownership of the books, if that makes sense. And I feel like, and I maybe wrongfully so, I don't know. I don't know how digital relates to payment for the artists, and that's a biggie for me. It's like, what is this digital world looking like for the talent, and for the comic companies? You would think it's got to be kind of similar to the fact that with paper, you're also paying like distribution companies, right? Like Diamond and companies like that handle comic distribution. So there is an overhead to that. So you'd imagine the digital overhead of using like a Comixology, for example, is a thing. But I would hope payment is similar to the artists and the talent that's behind the scenes that's creating these books. I hope, just because I really like digital as much as I like paper. I'm finding right now I'm a 50-50 purchaser, where I'm getting just as much paper as I got before, but how I'm handling it is a different sort of hybrid than before. I'm getting a lot more collected editions and things like that in paper, just because I like the tomes. and there's omnibuses and things where, when you and I started recording, they weren't being published at the level that they are now. And to me, I'm a bigger collector of omnibuses and absolutes and things like that, where it's nice to be able to pick up that volume and have everything nice and collected. And there's usually extras involved, deluxe editions of collected and things like that in paper. I really like having those as well. They're usually packed with extras that are really nice. So those type of things tend to be where I'm going for paper. And obviously, there's all the swag that you can get too. That statues, and my house is loaded.
Yeah, no.
In a good way. I mean, I actually like having this stuff around. It's nice that we have the availability of it. So I don't know. Week 2 I'm with you. Week 2 is much better than we were. I'm actually glad that you were mentioning some of the tips, the things that you were finding that were better for you, and that all your books are there, because that was a common thing I heard. A lot of people have not been able to find all of their books. And I'm encouraged by your experience, because you're not Prime and you're not Comixology Unlimited, that is not getting in the way of you finding your books. Frustrating, though, that you have to go back through and mark the ones that you've read, but at least there's a vehicle to do it. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel then if you go and do that. So, not the cleanest transition for Amazon. And I'm going to, full disclosure, I'm an Amazon fan. I enjoy being able to shop with the company and things like that. But this transition was not what I'm used to with Amazon at all. This was not simple and easy to use. This was jarring. Some I want to shout out this week that I bought that I didn't know was out. And I haven't had a chance to start reading it yet. I actually bought it in both the Kindle version and I bought it in the Audible, because I like to sometimes listen to a book fully through audio. Sometimes I like to read a couple of chapters, then listen audio, because there's that handoff that'll happen through Whisper Sync at times. But there's this book, it's Before the Batman, an original movie novel. This is an all-new story set in the the new Batman movie universe. It takes place before the movie. It's a prequel story by David Lumen. So if you are psyched for the film, or even if it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, I went and saw the film and I'm looking for more, this book is out there. And it just came out. So I wanted to shout this out as something for people not to miss. I haven't read it yet, and I'm going to be reading it over the next week. So I just wanted to shout out that it's a thing. I'll give more of my impressions of it after I've actually had a chance to read it. But this is like Batman week. I'm super excited to be able to say, I've got a novel I can read that's going to go along with this. And I hope that it leads to more. There's a lot of swag out there. Like my Apple Watch, you can buy like watch bands for it with watch faces. There's fossil watches that are out there. There's all kinds of shirts and different things that are out there for this. I'm glad to see the merch coming out just for this film. This one looks like it's going to be a big deal. I hope the reviews line up and that this winds up being kind of like what Spider-Man No Way Home was, because I was really glad to see how that film did. And I'm a big fan of the movie theater going experience, and anything that's drawing people out to the theaters is good, because it's an industry that I don't want to see go somewhere because of COVID. So I'm really glad to see where things are heading right now. And that part, I could not be more excited for this week, because the film's looking really good.
Yeah. I'm actually getting pretty excited to go to see this movie, man. We got some cool stuff. And again, it's one of those things I am still avoiding. I'm trying to avoid the spoilers, obviously, but I'm trying to avoid some of the trailers now.
Yeah.
Because the ones that pop up on regular TV I've seen before, so I'm like not too worried about it. But I'm not doing the internet dives and finding all the different stuff, because again, I want the surprise, I want the shock, I want the that's cool kind of moments.
I want to walk in. I'm trying to completely avoid reviews if I can, because I want to walk in and really enjoy the experience. I think one of the advantages we're going to these preview showings. So there's the there's the Tuesday and Wednesday. You and I are going to the Wednesday preview showing. So it's going to be a little bit in advance. So I'm hoping that means there's not going to be much out there yet as far as previews go. Not previews, but reviews. Because I want to walk in completely without any sense of what reviewers are saying about this thing. Just because I don't want that tarnishing my experience. I want to just clean, enjoy the film for what it is, and walk out with my first impressions. And then I don't care if I read them afterwards before you and I record to talk about it, because our next episode obviously is going to be the Batman.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to say this is what my impression was walking out clean of seeing the film with only a couple trailers that I saw. So it'll be fun. Some other things I read this week, obviously, because I'm Batman excited, I read the next issue of Batman the Knight, #2. Have you gotten to dive into this yet?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Did you read issue 2?
Yes.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Dude, man. I was like, yes.
This is a really good series to be out right now because of the film and the time frame that the film takes place in. But this idea of it being Batman before he became Batman, this road to training, the idea that, like, okay, in order to understand what it means to take down thieves and get into their head and be able to anticipate what they're going to do, I have to become one. And how do you skirt that line without seeing? There's that kind of thrill and that romanticism to it that is a part of the whole thing. And I love that danger is a part of it. And there's somebody who he's with that, like, the attractiveness of her and her training him is, there's something sexy about it. It's a draw for him. And you could see how you get pulled into that world of crime and where it would come from. I really liked, there's a psychological component to it and a thrill to it. The art's fantastic. And the story is just really incredibly written. Also, this is the writer that's taking over Batman.
Oh, cool. I didn't realize that.
So Joshua Williamson's first arc, it was always intended that was going to be a single arc. Chip Zdarsky's taken over afterwards. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, because I'm a big fan of his Daredevil work.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I'm digging this story. Again, it's one of those things, you think about cool Batman stories, you do need to have some neat, you do need to have him punch the bad guys, but you do need to have the intelligence of Batman. You need to have the, as you said, that psychological mindset of him, the detective mindset of him. But also, I like, because we always talk about the code, and you're seeing with him dancing with the villain, he's dancing with the code. And it's kind of the same thing where, why doesn't he cross the no-kill code? Well, he knows once you cross that line, you can't go back. So that's why he never crosses that line. And it's really cool to see the balance. And as you said, just that dancing with the dancing with the criminal element, shall we say.
Yeah, and we're going to actually see some of the people that we're used to from his training story that are going to pop up in this one, and we're seeing. I don't want to mention too much because I don't want to spoil it right now, but I thought this was about. You can actually see why he fell in love with Catwoman from what happens in this story. You know, how there is something, and also his distinction between a cat burglar and some of the violent criminals that are out there, and where Bruce is developing some of his philosophy as far as how do you distinguish between some of the what is a big crime and what's a lesser crime, and his own philosophy on what it means to, like, he's trying to figure out what being a vigilante means to him. Yeah, and it's cool to get inside that head in that distinction. What a great story. This is a writer who has been on my radar since reading his amazing Daredevil run. And he's got a Comixology original series now that I'm really digging. And I'm digging his DC work because we've seen him do some stuff in, I believe it was Urban Legends, if I remember correctly. I've seen other DC work from him in the Bat family. And, he gets it. He gets these kind of stories. Yep. So I'm excited. Yeah, it was announced this week, and Joshua Williamson went on Twitter or social media and let everyone know that this was the plan all along, that he was doing this initial arc to kick off the next phase of Batman, and Chip Zdarsky taking over was part of the plan all along. So I love the fact that this is the writer, because I've been really enjoying what Joshua Williamson's doing. I'm really excited that if we're going to have one arc with him, that this is the writer that's taking over afterwards, because I've been a big fan of his work. So this is awesome. Are you caught up on DC versus Vampires?
Yes.
Boy, issue 5 is a really, really good one. I just was really enjoying this. You and I were raving about this book when we talked about it on the show, and I've been continuing to follow it, and it's been a must-read. The idea of how they're handling this story and the difference between this and some of the zombie books that are out there, and I love zombie stories. It's weird when I'm saying that. I'm really not insulting the zombie horror genre and how it's been used in superhero books, but I think this exploration of DC and vampires is really embracing what's different about vampires. This is a great issue because in issue 5, things are starting to come to a head. People are starting to figure out who the players are, and yet we still don't know. We've got some hints at who the big bad behind the scenes might be, but we're still not. It has not been identified yet who is the lead vampire. Yes. And that's what they're really trying to track down. But I love that this issue really kicks off with this idea of Batman and Ollie teaming up, and both of them not being sure if the other's been turned. and
you're not turned. Wait, you're not turned. Wait, hold on.
And what a great sequence of events. But then the reality of, you find out that one of the people who has been turned, or at least you're being told has been turned, is your best friend. Yep. Who's like a brother to you. As close as you can get to being a brother without, being a blood relative. You can argue that the Hal and Ollie relationship is in fact, stronger than some brother relationships, and to have to sit there and go, we may need to take him down, and that may be the thing. Are you able to do that? And boy, that's a call. In that moment, that's a real call, especially when you're dealing with vampires, where unlike zombies, where they're clearly dead. It's because you and I are big fans of shows like Walking Dead and stories like that. And, that's hard enough when you're looking at that person and you're seeing them be a shadow of their former self. The problem with vampires is the fact that in some ways they're smart, they're crafty, and there's strong elements of the former person in there, which makes it a lot more difficult. And they know how to pull at your heartstrings. So that's what makes this a really great story, because of the fact that they are so coherent and they've got those elements to them. I cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying this event. This has really been a very, very cool story. The other book that I wanted to shout out real quick is Suicide Squad Blaze. Have you read this?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, so this is another Black Label series. It's a multi-issue series, but each issue is that prestige format where you get like double the story pages, And the idea behind this one is, okay, so we're used to the traditional Suicide Squad where here's the deal. Amanda Waller brings you in and she promises you yada, 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 time off your life sentence, right? Any little thing that you do, anything that you start doing above and beyond, like even protecting her, like if she gets attacked or something like that, will shave years off. So that's the incentive. The other problem is that if you don't go along with it, your head's going to get blown off.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. So we know what that looks like. Well, in this, the premise is they've got this thing called Blaze, where the idea behind it is what happens if instead of offering you time off, she offers you power. Like not just a little bit of power, but like an amazing amount of superpower. You're a normal person and you don't have any superpowers, or you've got superpowers and they're, just really lame, or
it's Minuteman. It's Minuteman powers.
Yeah, but I mean, let's go with no powers, 0 powers. But here's the catch to it. Instead of getting time off your sentence, you get this power, but then you have like months to live. and there's fine print associated with that. That's the premise. What would you say to that? Like, I don't know. It'd be cool to have superpowers, but the idea of like, okay, I'm going to be like Superman, but I've got 3 months to live. That's not for me. I'm an out. And needless to say, the traditional Suicide Squad team who she's recruiting for this is like, time out. What? We're going to die? No. Like before there was that roulette of, okay, yeah, we can get our head blown off if we don't like go along with you. But if we do go along with you, we get time shaved off our sentence, which means we get to live life. So assuming we trust you enough that we think you're going to actually do that, there's at least that gamble of we're going to get out of prison. In this particular case, you're saying we're going to be dead in like a short period of time because we're now more powerful. I'm out. And it fits the whole criminal mentality of, me. And what's happening in the world, there is this creature that's out there that's killing people. And even Superman can't find the creature. Batman can't find the creature. So the Suicide Squad, or, Amanda Waller, they're doing this top secret mission of let's take down this creature. But in order to do that, we have to make our own superhumans that have like next level powers, have special powers that they're going to go in. And this really is a true suicide mission because even if you survive it, you're only going to live for a few months. That's the whole premise of the story. So you get to know these people that aren't the traditional Suicide Squad's in it, but they're really there as part of the recruitment process. They're not the ones that are taking this Blaze, at least in issue 1. I don't know what happens in the rest of the story. So we've got like Peacemaker, Harley Quinn, King Shark, we got Captain Boomerang. They're all involved in this, but in the capacity of they said no.
Yeah, see, if I knew that I would get the powers, but I would be dead in 3 months, I would say no. But the question is, will Waller always be completely honest with people and say, yeah, it's in the fine print, you just didn't read the whole contract, Well, or is she being upfront and honest with people saying, yeah, you'll get this, but you will be dead in 3 months?
Well, and so that's the piece that's on the table. Everything I just said to you, that's not the fine print. The fine print is like the end of this issue ends with some fine print that nobody was told.
See, that's the thing with Waller. Yeah, with the Wall, man, you don't trust her at all. It's there's always got to be that fine print, and that's one of the reasons I love her as a character, because of just the fine print, because of that little extra bit that you don't know. It's one of the great things that makes her such an awesome character, that the villain of the story is the hero in a way, and you gotta love that.
Well, and here's the thing: you don't know what powers you're going to get. So you go through this process. Like, there's one guy who's like our main guy that we're following. He's like he was involved in a crime, where there was theft involved and things like that, and he gets put into jail. And you saw him earlier on, and you thought he was just kind of a throwaway. And nope, he's going to be one of the main characters. And he takes this concoction, or goes through this procedure, I should say. And his power so far is that his arms are invisible.
Oh, that's not good.
And by the way, his arms are invisible. That's it. Now, there might be other powers we don't know yet or anything like that, but that's pretty much so how it's manifesting so far. So you're like sitting here like, okay, great. How is this useful?
Yeah.
And there's more to the story than that. But he's with another team of people. One of them there is a girl who he's in love with that has also said yes to this. And actually, his only reason that he said yes is because she did. So it's kind of like this is a chance for the two of them to be together, their paths to cross again. And they're both going through this like suicide pact thing as part of the Suicide Squad, where they're doing this to save the world. And there's like there is a benevolent reason to do this that's going to be their legacy, yet they don't know what powers they're going to get or what they're really fighting. It's an interesting sort of story, and the big bad is something that we haven't seen manifest again yet till the latter part of the issue. Then you start to see this take place. So it's a cool story because the big bad is like such a threat. It's like a hit and run threat where like all of a sudden, boom, somebody's dead. And there's no trace of the big bad. Like, no way to track it. No way to know where it is. So it's the looming threat that I'm talking about is one that it's beyond the eyes of Superman. It's beyond the talents of Batman. And even this team initially can't find what this threat is. It's a very different story. What we've come to expect from Black Label. The art's great. The writing is fantastic. I love that the issues are much meatier, because they're able to go a lot more in depth. But to me, I think you've got to strategically make certain stories more than the 22 pages because of this. This is much longer than traditional comic book. And I love that it's multiple issues. It's going to be a big, epic story. This is the right time for this. I'm so happy, like Peacemaker, the wrap-up of Peacemaker, my kind of enjoyment of Suicide Squad, because I really liked the last Suicide Squad film. I've been very into the Suicide Squad concept. I'm glad they're playing around with it with different kinds of stories where it's not just about the main series, but they're also experimenting with these different kinds of, we got that Peacemaker one-shot, we've got this story now. They all kind of go together with being this different sort of exploration. And it's a concept that I always liked, but was never really like a big Suicide Squad reader. Now I'm finding myself not only enjoying this kind of material, it's current, but I am going back and reading a lot of the back issues and realizing, wow, I've been missing something here with the Suicide Squad. Going back to the Ostrander stuff and things like that I didn't read before. So none of that is a negative commentary on that. It never had the budget for it. So now I'm going back and enjoying the fact that I can read some of that now. I've been really Suicide Squad happy. This is one, though, I would say if you're missing this miniseries, issue 1's the only issue out so far. It's worth it. It's really a good-looking book and got a great story to it. Something different.
It's funny you talk about going back and reading some of the old stuff, because I've been using the DC Infinite app to do that. Mm-hmm. I pick a title and I go back old, and I'm reading it forward, and that's really mostly how I've been using the Infinite app. And I kind of like that. I go, today's a Action Comics Day, or today's a Detective Comics Day. But one of the things that the Amazology did was, as I said, it pulled all my books forward, and I'm sitting there staring at the Suicide Squad, not the Secret Six stuff. That, the Simone stuff, that popped up. And it just, because before it'd always been hidden because I'd read it a long time ago, and whenever I wanted to read it, I would just find it and pull it back up. But I was sitting there glaring, so I went back and I reread, stuff like Secret Six, and went back and reread all that stuff. And there's a lot of these old titles that were around before that we read years ago that I'm just going back and rereading again. And that's something I do enjoy about the Infinite app, and I enjoy about, just the books that I've bought, just going back and rereading stuff sometimes. So sometimes I like the big meaty tomes, but sometimes just on your app, on iZilla, I open up and I just start rereading stuff.
Yeah, I find it's funny that you mention that, because I find that I go to my shelves usually for that with, a lot of the omnibuses and collected editions and things that I've been gathering. It's digitally, like we're doing the upcoming Camelot 3000. That's going to be something we're going to start exploring later this month. And this is going to be the first time where I'm going to do like a 12-issue series where I'm going to read it exclusively through DC Infinite. And I own it, but it's a story that I've just never read before. And I'm like, well, I'm going to read it through Infinite. Let's see what that experience is like, because I'd like to talk about that as part of the process too. And we're probably going to do that when it's going to be I think it's going to be a 2-episode exploration where we're going to do 1 through 6 and then 7 through 12, probably. We'll break it up that way. Because the length of the discussion with it being a 12-issue series, I think is going to lend itself to that. But I'm excited to explore that because it's something from the 80s that did you delve into that at all before?
Not at all.
Okay.
This is 100% all new for me.
Yeah, I never read it. It was something at the time. It's Mike W. Barr and Brian Boland. I mean, so we're talking about some big names. And it was something, again, an example of I didn't have the budget at that time to explore it. I saw it and it looked great. And I just never had the chance to read it. So it'll be fun to talk about this on the show, fresh. And how does it read in 2022? As a fresh read. So I'm excited for that. It's a good time to be a comic fan. There's a lot of ways for us to get a hold of comic content. I'm still a big fan of physical. I don't want anyone to think that because we're talking so much about digital because of Comixology that I've thrown physical out the window. I haven't. I still love my physical media. And I actually like the hybrid. There's times where I want to pick up a book. I want to hold a book. I want the feel of it. There's the comic book smell.
Yes.
There's something to that. And there's that element to it. It is that medium. I'm just glad to see the medium. I kind of look at digital now as being the newsstand. Growing up, we had the direct market and the newsstand. Actually, we had the newsstand before there was a direct market. I'm glad to see digital out there. I don't know how it's going to become a newsstand. I don't know if these subscription services are the vehicle to it. I want to see how we're getting more people to get to know the world of comics that wouldn't previously. There's a lot of competition out there, and it's in other mediums, particularly the video game world, I think is one it's a competition medium for comics. It can be a lead into it, but it's also a competition. So it'll be interesting to see where things go with product. And honestly, I just want this. I want this industry to be around. So it's good. It's an interesting time to be a fan.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Our next discussion is on Aquamen #1. The script by Chuck Brown and Brandon Thomas. Art by Sami Bashiri, Basri. Colors by Adriano Lucas. Letters by And World Design. Cover by Travis Moore and Adriano Lucas. Arthur Curry variant cover by Kyle New. NGU. The Jackson Hyde variant covers by Nick Robles. Ratio variant cover Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair. Black History Month variant cover by Alexis Franklin. Editors are Andrea Shea and Michael McAllister. Senior editor Paul Kaminsky. And Aquaman was created by Paul Norris.
I am so glad this book is out. And I'm glad the way that they rolled it out. We were just talking about the fact that they had these 2 miniseries. They had the Aquaman the Becoming, and we had the Black Manta miniseries that were leading up to this. And I didn't know what Aquaman was going to be. I thought, okay, is this going to lead to an event? What is Aquaman? I didn't realize Aquaman until we started getting closer that Aquaman was actually going to be a series that's going on. But I really liked the approach of the 2 books building, and I'm glad it's building to a series because I want an ongoing. I miss having a regular Aquaman book. So I didn't know what the premise was going to be, and I think you didn't want to know what the premise was going to be until this whole thing started unfolding. But what did you think about the 2 miniseries leading into this, both Black Manta and Aquaman the Becoming? I really enjoyed that delivery, kind of the fact that the stories were kind of paralleling each other. They were both going on at the same time with hints and echoes of both, but a very targeted Black Manta series and a very targeted series to Jackson. But they really flesh out the history of Jackson, the history of his family, Black Manta, his family, a lot of stuff that I didn't know was being revealed in that, and just got me a lot more interested in this book and Jackson in particular, who I've always liked. But he's a character that, remember, they like brought him in with a bang, and then all of a sudden he kind of like drifted to the background. It's like, what's going on? Why did we lose this character? I'm glad that he's being brought to the forefront again in a very, very big way. Where are you at?
Well, I'll tell you, I loved these miniseries, and part of the reason I loved the series is they really did focus on Jackson and Black Manta. They really did let them be the main characters in the story. And, whenever you have something in like the Bat universe, you're always, Batman's always going to have some part of it. Whenever you have something in the Aquaman universe, Aquaman's always going to have some part in it, but how much does he play into it? Is it an Aquaman story with Black Manta? Is it an Aquaman story with, Jackson? No, they were the focus. They were the main characters. They were the strength of these characters carried the series. And I thought that was something that was awesome. And I love, especially we had some great mirror moments in Jackson in The Becoming. She's always just one of those characters. I love whenever they use her and they use her correctly. And we get this powerful, there's got to be a reason why she's the queen. It's not just because she's good looking. There's a lot more to her. Same thing like with Wonder Woman. Why is Wonder Woman Wonder Woman? Well, there's a reason. It's not just that, she looks good. No, there's so much more to her character, so much more to her personality. Same thing with Mira. And we're seeing those kind of strengths in this series, And I also love the fact that we didn't have a full face turn on Black Manta. He's not a hero. He's a villain. He's a pirate. And I love the fact that he still embraces the pirate in him, but there was stuff where he's like, either I do this or the world dies. Well, if the world dies, then I've got nothing. So I got to do this. So I love the fact that he doesn't, become the hero. He doesn't become just the da-da-da. No, that's not who he is. But there's going to be times when he needs to work with the heroes because he's intelligent and he recognizes, okay, I've got to do this now. And I really enjoyed how they showed that nice, just that nice, that nice balance of not doing a full becoming the goody-goody hero, but he's not pure evil either. He is, again, that pirate, that opportunistic. He takes advantage of the situations and how is it going to benefit him. But in the end, he's not a evil, I want to destroy the world or I want to conquer the world. He just wants to his little corner of the world. He wants to make sure, he's got what he wants. And I think that was a really great balance on showing him, especially showing his loyalty to his people. Because that is, again, I've studied a lot about the pirates and the pirate code and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the things I like about the rogues, how the rogues have a code. Well, pirates also have a code towards each other, and that you see his loyalty, really play out with his people. He wasn't just, forget about them. No, he took risks to save some of his people. He took risks to actually, benefit himself, but also to benefit others, and when it needed to be done. And I loved seeing that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's one of those things where I'm really glad that we have this kind of approach with the character where we get to see he's a dad, right? So his relationship to Jackson also is one where, as a parent, it means something to him, but even trying to figure out what does that relationship mean? What legacy do I want him to have? What, is there a path to that for us? Regret of, like, we don't have a relationship. He doesn't understand me. I don't understand him. So even trying to reach out to him, you get to see this opportunity where he's trying to put into words and ultimately decides not to send what he was going to send, but this outreach of saying, I want this kid to be my legacy. I want him to, but how do you connect that path when they philosophically are so different?
Yeah.
And it becomes an interesting sort of thing. Yet it is his kid. And there are elements of him that are apparent in Jackson, but their idea of a code is completely different. To your point about him being a villain, I'm glad that they didn't do, to your point, a complete face turn as well. I like the way that you put that. But yet, you understand that he's not the same kind of villain as the villain he was facing in his miniseries. Like, there's different degrees based on the fact that it's not as cut and dry as good and evil. It's good has a spectrum. Evil has a spectrum. Bad and good have spectrums. And there's elements of people there is loyalty in some villains. Others, none. And it's interesting to see that Black Manta does have a sense of loyalty and a sense of purpose. And it's different than the heroes, mind you, but there's something there. So his way of operating is vastly different. And I thought the miniseries did a great job of highlighting that, where you're like sitting here saying, okay, there's a more depth to Black Manta. And I think it's important every so often that they put out these miniseries or full-blown series like the Joker, for example, where you get this more in-depth exploration of these villains. It makes them a lot more interesting later on when then you plop them into a series like Aquamen, where you're like, okay, I'm walking in with some background knowledge here. You don't need to have read either miniseries in order to be enjoying issue 1 of Aquamen. You don't. I'll say that right out of the gate. So if you're like, I get what you're saying, guys, budget-wise, I cannot go back and read those 2 miniseries. You're okay. It's and if you got the DC app, you can wait till it comes out and go ahead and read it that way. I understand budgets are different, and respect that. I would not, if you're like, hey, but I'm jonesing for some Aquaman, pick up Aquaman. You're good. Everything's going to be fine. They give you everything you need right here. What we're telling you, though, is both of these miniseries, for those of you that missed them, and you're like, I can, that's something I can do. It's doable for me. I would check them out, especially if you liked issue 1 of Aquaman. If you like, this is your jumping on point, I would definitely go back and check out those miniseries because they give you some really cool background depth and knowledge of these characters and their family backgrounds and things that I think are really interesting. Jackson and his mother and his sister and things like that flesh out in that story. And even what drives Jackson as a hero. Like, I love the fact that we got to see Jackson's humanity. Get to know a little bit more about him and see his drive. I think he's a really cool character. I always have. I needed that connection with him that we got in Aquaman The Becoming, though. We got some of that in Future State, like if you read the Future State series. But I think this was one where it's in current continuity. It's happening right now. It's not a what if we go down this path. This is what's happening. This is canon. This is the direction going forward. So it was really great to see that play out and see where Aquaman's heading. I'm a big fan of Jackson. I'm very high on the character. And then to have Orin in this, Orin, whatever you want to call him, our Aquaman in the series, this is kind of like everything that I was hoping for out of this one. Because we're clearly building to something. And
something's coming.
Yeah.
Something big is coming. And again, I like how, as we said, the 2 miniseries were awesome setup for it, but you don't really need that in Aquaman. If you pick up Aquaman, you're rocking right from the beginning, right along with us. There's some editor notes saying, there's a couple of editor notes leading back to it, but they give you enough info here. And again, I like how this, Aquaman itself opens up. Right from the very beginning, you've got a big old sea monster, and I'm like, yeah.
I do like that the series does reference the fact that both of them are called Aquaman. And
yes.
They're like, Aquaman and his friend, Aquaman.
Is that right? Wait, yeah, that's right. And they even debated on air, in the news broadcast. And again, I like that they're doing that.
Yep.
We talked about with Batman, should Jace have his own code name? We're like, no, we like that. I like that with this as well, because Arthur always said, I'm not Aquaman, I'm Arthur. He hates the code name, so he's going to have it. Instead of calling Jackson Aqualad, he's Aquaman. And I like the fact that they're giving him that recognition that, yes, there's more than one Aquaman. There's more than one Flashes. There's more than one Batman now. I like that we have more than one hero. Now, again, it's funny hearing me say that, because if this was like 3 or 4 years ago, I probably would have been opposed to it. I would have been like, he really should have his own code name, But it's something that, as DC has been doing this with the characters. And I like the fact that they're acknowledging that, yes, we have more than one of these characters. Now, the question I'm wondering is, when his daughter grows up, what's going to be her name? Is it going to be Aquawoman? Is she just going to go her name? What are they going to go with that? And that's what I want to know, how they handle her.
It's funny. Friend of the show, Russell, sent us an article about Grant Morrison. I just sent it just a day or two ago, and it was talking about his most recent run on Green Lantern and some of the challenges that he's facing nowadays as far as with the comic audience shifting and just sales numbers being different for his work than he's used to. And about how 5G was something he was excited about, with the idea of the characters growing old and being a part of that, which was something that he was interested in pursuing and being a part of. And that we're heading in that direction, but not to the same level that they were going to, where they were doing this generational idea of heroes growing old. It was an interesting sort of take from him. Just because of the fact that he's clearly defined multiple eras in comics, where he's been a part of them in recent years. So it was interesting just to see that take. Looking at this, it's very, very clear we've got something big coming with Justice League 75, where I don't know how it's going to manifest. Is it going to be like Final Crisis, for example, where we took Batman off the table, right? But we knew right away that Batman was still alive. Or is this going to be one of those things where the Justice League really, as far as we know, they're off the table for who knows how long, right? And what that's going to mean. I don't know. We know this is looming. We know this is coming. What does that mean for, we know one player's coming back. Don't know who yet. Pretty sure from everything I'm reading, it's not the Trinity.
Yeah.
So what is that going to look like? And this is a great example of, we've got two Aquamen right now, but what happens when we don't? And how far are they going to go with this? It's interesting because both DC and Marvel have tried this over the years to varying degrees of success, this passing of the torch to newer characters. And when I say varying degrees of success, it's been like, let's use Miles Morales as an example. I would say Miles is a great example of a success. Yes, Peter Parker's back. Peter Parker's Spider-Man. But Miles, because of the fact that they had the Ultimate Comics line and all that, was able to become a very successful character to the point where they've integrated that character as Spider-Man back into the Marvel Universe proper. And that character's up and running. So it's doable. Wally West is a great example of DC passing the torch, right? Barry died famously in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it's one of the examples of something that they didn't undo for a long, long time. And when they finally undid it, it was like, it's always okay. I'm not against like bringing characters back or things like that, because look what they did with Barry. I would make a strong argument that they absolutely brought Barry back at the right time and went the full gambit with Barry, and are at a point right now where it makes sense to be taking a look at Wally and putting Wally in that spot. I actually totally love what they're doing right now. But that's an example of, we've been able to generationally, with Wally West, make it work. And it has worked. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this all goes, what's successful and what's not. Is Jace going to be successful as Batman in the same way? I think it's, at some point in time, I think you need to bring back Bruce, Clark, and Diana, but what does that look like? And it's going to be very interesting to see how DC's approaching this. I'm excited. I think this is an exciting time. Justice League number 75 doesn't have me it has me worried in the sense that I'm protective of these characters, right? So, these are my friends, right? You got to protect them and you got to look out for them. So the story has the sense of, this upcoming story has this sense of dread that it's supposed to have. But I'm excited because there's a lot of interesting characters to explore this with. And it's a world that's going to be interesting to explore. So it's a story that I'm hoping is followed with a quality of material that anybody that picks up Justice League number 75 and decides to stick around and view this sandbox is met with material that matches the anticipation, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that this does. Anytime you do a stunt like this, and it's a stunt, and that's not a negative thing. Sometimes when we use the term stunt, you're saying it with a negative connotation, and I think we got to get past that. Of course, it's a stunt, anything is in a stunt with the idea of getting people's attention, right? And those stunts are either have depth to them or they're shallow and like it works for one issue and then people go bye-bye. This I'm hoping is something that draws people into not just DC, but into comic shops and taking a poke around and taking a look at material that's out there and maybe walking out with some things that they didn't expect to try. It's an interesting sort of time with comics because I don't know that people come jumping at the comic book world looking at these issues, like issue number 75 of Justice League going, that's going to be a moneymaker for me. Where that used to be a thing, right? Where even casual fans would be like, I should pick up a couple copies of that in case it's worth something. I don't know how much that's a thing now, for casual people where they're looking to the comic book market as being that thing. But I'm thinking that the stunt might get people to say, I kind of want to read that and see what they're doing. And that would be the best possible outcome because slabbing it and putting it away does not bring in readers. Actually reading the story and checking out what they do brings in readers. So I'm hoping the buzz generates an audience of not only lapsed readers, but maybe some people that have never dipped their toe into the comic book world to try it out. And then they find characters like this. Jackson is an interesting character. Like, I want to read Jackson as a main character of the series. And Aquaman the Becoming showed me that. Because I'm an Arthur guy. I will always be an Arthur guy. Peter David made me an Arthur guy. Aquaman Tide in Time, I'm like, wow, this miniseries. I grew up with Super Friends. He was the guy to talk to fish. I enjoyed Super Friends. I loved the character on Super Friends. I'm not knocking him when I say that, but I mean, it's the truth. So I didn't read Aquaman in comics, except if, I'd get like I mentioned flea markets many times on the show. So every so often I get an Aquaman issue. I always liked what I read, but it wasn't something where I wasn't going to give up Batman to go read Aquaman. When Tide in Time came out and Peter David, like I was reading it monthly and then that launched into an ongoing series and we got the Hook Hand and all this other kind of stuff that was going on. I mean, he was telling stories of Dolphin and all these wonderful characters that were associated with Arthur and his world. And we got to really get into the head of Arthur and know more about the character. Not only did I follow that series going forward, I went back and was reading stuff. And I'm a big fan of this character because of that. There was a point in time where it was like I was reading Batman and Aquaman exclusively because, I didn't have much of a budget. And it was a really good time where, I was reading like 5 books and one of them was Aquaman and I wouldn't let Aquaman go because it was that kind of quality. So Jackson's becoming that kind of character for me, though, is where I'm really going with this. And I really Jackson is a solo series character, Jim. Are you in on, is that a character you want to follow more?
I would 100% follow a solo on Jackson. I think, again, when they first introduced the character, I thought he was kind of cool. When he was hanging with the Titans and seeing him with them, I was like, okay, that's kind of I like this character. The Becoming really did a good thing with developing who he is, what he's about, his own personal inner demons that he's dealing with. He's got his own personal issues. Every hero has these little quirks. Every hero has these little things that where they're not completely clean cut, everything's just, everything's good to go and happy, joy. He's got his issues and he's got his problems. He's got his personal stuff. And those are the kind of things that I was like, man, this is one of the things I really liked about that Aquaman, the Becoming series, because it really did dive deeper into who he is, what he's about, his insecurities, and all this, that the personal character flaws that he has. And stuff like that is where it would carry me through an ongoing series. Now, I really enjoyed Aquaman, and I like the fact that it is a team Aquaman book because, as I said, we get some Mira stuff, and anytime they include Mira in a book, I'm happy because, again, she's one of those awesome characters that I really do enjoy how they handle her now, especially now. They're doing a really good job with her. So this is one of those things where this title is, has a little bit of everything for everybody. You do get some good Arthur stories because, again, the Jeff Johns Aquaman run was my run that made me realize how cool Arthur is. If for the same reason you had with Peter David, where it showed that he's more than just a guy who talks to fish. Mm-hmm. He's more than just the king of Atlantis. There's more to him about, it dealt more with him interacting with people and just his general I still remember that first issue where he's in that the fish shop, and they're like, "You eat fish?" He's like, "Yeah, I enjoy it. It tastes very good." And then the one guy just kept bugging him, and we were laughing. I remember what we talked about. We were laughing like that'd be us, the comic book fan who just doesn't let go. Just let the guy have his moment of peace, there, dude. Those are the kind of stuff that made me really enjoy Aquaman. The Becoming series had those kind of moments with me, and Jackson made me go, okay, yeah, this is a cool kid. I like him.
Mira is a character you mentioned earlier too. That is one that in the Peter David run initially, Mira wasn't a character that was a heavy focus. Seeing her eventually get fleshed out in that series, and then really Jeff Johns and a lot of the stuff that was going on in Brightest Day and stuff like that really made me a huge fan of Mira. And seeing her come into the spotlight. So there's a whole world here that I'm protective of. I will totally follow a series with Jackson. I'm very protective of Arthur. I'm very protective of Mira. This Ocean Master opening is really, really cool in this story where we've got this sea creature. And I love when they take advantage of this, where we start to see just how vast and dangerous the underwater world is, where they're able to bring things that are very destructive into the world and to take the world a hostage in the way that people like Ocean Master do. And you can see why you would need more than one Aquaman to deal with this particular situation, because not only are you dealing with the might and power of Ocean Master, you're dealing with whatever that thing is. That giant dragon-looking thing that is, and I love it. I mean, the rich colors, there's something about that. The artwork in this should be noted. I mean, this is really a good-looking series. You've got that United Nations headquarters shot over there where you get the establishing shot, and it's something like out of a Godzilla movie. And I just love that kind of sense of scale and scope where it's making the building look tiny. The headquarters, and that's really important where you're like, okay, this is monumental. And Ocean Master is a guy you just want to punch, right?
Yes.
I mean, so it's something that for an opening, that's set. And it's a great opening establishment of that piece. But then we're also framed with, there's something going on in Bexley, Ohio. And it's like, this guy has some eye infection. You're like, well, that's not good. We know that's not going to, go lead to something like...
in a comic book or a horror movie, some weird infection like that means, oh, that's not a good thing. That right there, that's a problem, dude.
Yeah. Dude, there's not drops for this.
yeah. Visine is not going to do the trick, Yeah. And I loved how when he sees the news article, his language changes to, and I'm assuming that's Atlantean or some weird underwater language. Yeah, and I loved seeing how it just triggered there. And that was like the beginning of the end for our buddy here.
The sleeper agent thing, which is really cool. Are you Superman and Lois? How far did you get in season 1?
I think I'm about halfway.
Okay. So there's some interesting when you take a look at sleeper agents, how creepy they are. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's some of this explored in Superman and Lois in a way that is really interesting. This idea of your main personality being supplanted by something else. Here's the thing, but this Bob that we're seeing in there, is Bob somebody who is he truly an Atlantean in his core? Has he been supplanted by something? Is this an infection that has changed Bob, or is this something that's welling up from the inside that was always there? We don't know that yet, and that part is really interesting. And I'm curious to see it. But that's horror movie. You mentioned horror movie, and to me, the idea of who you are being supplanted, whatever reason for that, is a scary thought, because you can heal from a lot of injuries that you're not coming back from. And it's a scary sort of piece, and I love that sense of danger. You've got this big story where you're seeing the action that we want to see from a superhero story, but besides that, I mean, dude blows up his home. For Atlanta.
More than his home, dude. That bomb.
Yeah.
that created a nice little creator, and who knows what is going to be the fallout, on that, because that wasn't just a simple boom boom. There's something more to that, and that's the opening salvo, that's the opening firing on that. But I also loved how, along with our buddy in Ohio, we've got our buddy in Paris, France, that Black Manta's dealing with. And this was one of the things that really, it's one of the things that why the Black Manta miniseries was so cool. It laid the groundwork for these sleeper agents. Manta, it's a genetic thing where these are part of the lost tribe, and they're distant relatives of it, and someone can access that genetic code and access that through the one Alcriacum. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I've never been able to pronounce it. Orichalcum, that mineral,
Orichalcum,
is able to access it.
Orichalcum is how I'm pronouncing it. So
okay, I like it. But again, you see the one dude in Paris starting to have that same kind of reaction. So all this stuff is kind of starting to get interconnected. And the Aquamen series itself does a good job explaining it. You get a little bit more when you see how Black Manta dealt with it in his series. And it's kind of a neat, again, this was a really good mixture of the two, really good. The creative team in Aquamen handled this really well, in that we understand what's going on, just by reading this book. But if you read the miniseries, then you got a little bit more. You got to see the background. You got to see how Black Manta gets tied into this stuff.
Yeah, his swag is real cool. Like when you see him with the shade sitting down there, it's funny. One of the people that's been rumored to be, and I don't know how true this rumor is. I think now they're just tossing out a wish list of people to be the next James Bond, but Idris Elba is been one of the names that's been bandied about, and I don't think they've gotten to that level yet. But I got to say, in the Black Manta miniseries, the art really looked like it was like a variation of Idris Elba. Yeah. Black Manta in that one. And when you see in this series, you see him with the glasses on and dressed to the nines. I'm sitting there Idris Elba is James Bond. He's got the right kind of swag that I could see that really working. Yes. Because I think with James Bond, you've got to have that way of carrying yourself. What's interesting is for years, Black Manta was Aquaman's nemesis, and you saw him in his costume. You didn't often get to see him like this outside of the costume. And thinking he's a criminal, who likes the finer things, the fact that he's got some money and, pulled out some things like this. In Paris, when he's infiltrating, Black Manta's got some really cool swag to him. Here's another guy. I would follow Black Manta in an ongoing. And I'm not saying I want him to be he doesn't have to be a good guy in the ongoing. He can be just Black Manta. Let's keep going with him. I want to know more, because I enjoy watching stuff like this. And I'm saying that depending on where this series goes, if there's a point, I'm fine with him continuing on in this series, kind of helping out and skirting the line, and we'll see what he does. This is an interesting sort of story that we're seeing here. I loved seeing the trade-off between Jackson fighting our giant lizard creature and Black Manta in those action sequences, because it was some great, fast-moving comic book drama.
Yeah, and I like how, again, they showed just how the commonality between father and son. Mm-hmm. Because even the dialogue that he's saying, Manta's saying, "Hey, I don't want to hurt this guy. I want to take him down," and Jackson's saying that to the creature, saying, "Hey, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to feel really bad if I have to hurt you," and then you jump back and forth, and it was kind of a common dialogue between the two of them. But there were their variations where where Manta's like, if I have to, I will kill this guy, just on principle, but he really didn't want to. And even to the point where when he put the guy down, he's like, "I barely touched him. What the heck?" And he's like, "The guy had a heart attack." He's like, "Okay, grab the body," and it was a really cool, just again, father and son, there are such commonality between these two. Mm-hmm. And, part of me does root for a moment where these two will have a better, understanding of each other. Again, they're never going to see eye to eye because of that final level of the kill code. Because Jackson really doesn't cross over the kill code, Manta will. And that's going to be the final real thing that gets them. But part of me does wish they would have some type of relationship, some type of friendship, some type of something between them. And you see moments like this where you understand they could maybe, but one of them will have to back down from their beliefs, and neither one of them will. If Manta gives up the criminal life and says, okay, I'm going to give up the criminal life, he and Jackson could have a relationship. If Jackson says, okay, I'm going to give up the hero life and I'm going to join you as a pirate, they would have a relationship. But neither one of them will cross over, to the other side.
It's interesting where I relate to this story to a certain extent. Neither my father or I were criminals, but my father and I growing up had a relationship where we didn't understand each other. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things. It wasn't until later in life that we found common ground, or at least I think got to understand each other. Whereas my brother and him had a lot of the same interests. I was never a big one, like watching a lot of sports. Like I enjoy it casually, but like I don't need to watch every football game, golf, yada yada, basketball, keep it going. But my brother and him very much were very interested in those things and had them in common. They did a lot of those things together. So it was always an area of growth between the two of them. Where I relate to these characters, I think it's very true of relationships and families. I think that some children relate very easily to their parents, where like my relationship with my mom was one where my mom understood me far better and I understood her far better. Until later in life where my father and I had a relationship. It's interesting to see this fold out and kind of go, you can relate to this. There's a humanity to that. There's a reality to the fact that even between siblings, right? Maybe it's not parents, but two siblings may not be having that cohesive relationship. And there's a lot to relate to, because my brother and I actually growing up, when we were younger, related to each other real well. As we got older, did not. And then circling back, we do now. We've grown to really appreciate not only our similarities, but our differences. And I think that's that point that you get to. It's an understanding, right? It's a learning how to interact and how to respect the beliefs and talents of the person that's in your family. It's something you do with friends, I think, far more easily than we often do with family, which I think is a fair statement, because friends you kind of start off with your differences and find the common ground, whereas family you're kind of like you're dropped in, and this isn't a choice, a selection on the playground. These are the people that you have. So this family relationship is very honest. It's very real. And I think we all can relate to it in some capacity. And it's very well written. Very well written. It's something that I really appreciate about how this series is handling that relationship. And it's good writing. I love the character of Black Manta now, whereas before it was kind of like Aquaman needs a nemesis. It makes sense that it's a nemesis from the water. Let's make him Black Manta. The helmet looks cool, and we'll have a power set. Like I remember him from the Justice League or the Super Friends Legion of Doom days. That was my first exposure to Black Manta. Was that, and you and I'm sure you watched that too. Saturday mornings that was what I knew Black Manta from. You didn't know a whole lot about him other than that, right? This exploration of him really makes it cool. And him having a kid and that kid being, somebody who relates more to Arthur right now, where Arthur's really his dad, to a certain extent, as far as that mentor relationship. And Arthur's trying to skirt that line of being a friend, a parent, a mentor, and respect Jackson. And sometimes Arthur gets it right. Other times he gets it wrong. And I love this kind of exploration. Seeing Black Manta have a reason to team up with them and a reason to be there. And even his way of exploring it, like he's using this guy as a cadaver. like this is not something Arthur or Jackson would be doing. So we're getting a different level of information exploration from Black Manta than we would from Arthur and Jackson, leading to that confrontation at the end where Arthur's like, hey, hang on. This guy's helping us right now. He's on our side. You got to calm down. It's an interesting sort of conclusion to the story. A lot happening in this first issue. And none of it felt rushed. It moved at a really good pace, but a lot of depth, a lot going on. If this is going to be the direction, the writing of this series, I am really, really excited for where this is going. This is a good kickoff issue that shows that this series has got a lot going on. There's something, I think, for everybody in this. So if you did not pick up Aquamen, you really need to look at this. It's a good series.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the things I loved is how we do have a clean ending in that the big fish is taken down, Orm's locked up, gets arrested. But even Orm's like, hey, you don't understand. I did this for Atlantis. And Arthur's like, something real is happening here. But he takes the time, though. He sees that Jackson is troubled over what happened. Because Jackson did lose a bit of control in how he was just beating on that giant, it's a big giant, snake fishy thingy, and so he's just hitting it full go. But in reality, Orm was manipulating it, controlling the creature. And I loved how in the one scene they show Arthur using his powers to communicate with the snake thing while Jackson's fighting Orm on its back. And they show how Arthur would have handled the situation, how Arthur would have handled the monster versus how Jackson handled it.
Yep.
But again, and even Arthur's like, hey, maybe you need some time here. He's like, I don't need, and there's that rage, that moments of with Jackson, how dealing with his mother, being in a coma, which happened in The Becoming, and he basically says it's his fault. He believes it's his fault, to the point where he's still trying to figure out who he is, what he's about. What kind of hero is he? And I love those moments. And that leads right into the Black Manta confrontation where Jackson is just full frontal attack on Manta. He's like, there's a dead body there. He murdered him. I'm going to take you down, take it on all his frustration and anger. And Manta, being the father that he is, he's like, I don't want to hurt you. Then he shoots him and says, I said, I don't want to hurt you. I didn't say I wouldn't hurt you. I love just that distinction. Again, that little distinction of who Manta is. These were just some really cool character moments tied into action sequences, great superhero moments. This is one of those things where it really had me loving this cast. I would love to see a Black Manta series or a Jackson of his own series, but because we're getting this great interaction, I'm so glad they're all together.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm under the assumption, and might feel, I don't know how they're going to handle all this. I guess I'm under the assumption that at some point in time, potentially Arthur's gone. And I don't know how that's going to manifest, like what that means for main titles. Is what's happening in Justice League going to be what's happening concurrently in this title? I don't know. I don't know how they're going to play this out. They've had status quo changes before that have happened where there's been other titles in the universe that have given us stories featuring the characters that are no longer with us, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their plans are, and it's kind of a wait and see as far as what that looks like. But the point is, we got 3 characters in this series, and any one of them are ones that I would follow.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what I'm finding the most interesting in this, is the fact that I really feel like these are characters that I really enjoy. I would follow them further. That's something that's pretty important to me in a comic series as I'm going forward. I like this a lot, and it's not a surprise for me that I'd be drawn to it. But what I'm finding is I'm usually very particular, saying this book's got to have Arthur in it. If it doesn't have Arthur in it, I'm not finding that with this. I'm finding I like all of them, and I would follow any one of them as the lead.
Oh, big time. And if after 75, if Arthur doesn't come back, this book could very easily survive with Jackson and Manta as the leads.
Yeah.
100%. I would still completely read it just because I think it'd be an interesting, that would be a really cool dynamic. Well, these two together are a cool dynamic, but take Arthur out of the mix, they really have to figure out a way to work together, because and maybe that would mean more screen time for Mira, which, again, would be wonderful for me. So this right here, this is a solid base for this series. I'm 100% looking forward to issue 2 and whatnot and beyond.
And what you're really saying is not just survive, but you're saying survive and thrive.
Yes.
Which is an interesting sort of way of looking at it. The fact that you can look at a series like this and go, not only would it survive, but it would be something that you would keep on reading and would enjoy keeping on reading.
And I think it'd be, just thinking about the possible stories they would tell. If you take Arthur out of the mix and it's just the two of them, and Jackson has to figure out his own, without having his mentor there, who was his calming agent, how can, Jackson continue? And will Manta then see the missing of that, the missing piece, try to take advantage of that, or will he be a father and be supportive of his son and help his son through it? Those are the kind of stuff that, just off the top of my head, stories they could go with it. Then you throw Mira into the mix. She could really, shake things up. And who knows, even Orm could potentially be a part of the series, because Orm always has had that I am for Atlantis kind of mindset.
Yeah,
He's had that kind of Lex Luthor vibe to him, where he's like, he doesn't see himself as the villain. He sees himself as the champion, the savior of Atlantis. So who knows, with Arthur gone, maybe he would step up. There's so many different things of where they could go with this series that I'm actually very excited for the future of Aquamen.
Progression can be fun, right?
Yes.
And it really, what you're laying out is just a pathway to some interesting progression that, fingers crossed, can really come out of this series. And I'm excited to see where this goes. We're very much on the same page with this. You and I have talked over the years on the show about and I would actually say it's fair to say you're far more open to true progression than I am. Whereas I'm very protective of, but it's got to be Bruce, it's got to be Clark, it's got to be. Whereas you're like, I'm okay with them aging out. And you actually, 5G was probably something that you would have been very much one to, at least what we were hearing about 5G,
right?
Without actually having see it come to fruition. I don't know that how accurate we would be on that. But out of the two of us, I think you were probably a lot less afraid of 5G than I would have been. And I'll say that it would be something that I would jump on and read it, but I would be scared of it. and I say that because I love these characters. And it's interesting right now where DC's going. They're charting some waters where I think they're trying to make noise, trying to find the right balance of what is too much with regards to change. You want to do the right amount of change to draw people in, but you don't want to alienate your current audience in that process. And it's a tricky, tentative line. And the moves that they're making so far, I'm digging. I'm enjoying Jace. I'm enjoying these characters. We know we're getting like a World's Finest series from Mark Waid with Bruce and Clark.
Yeah.
Which obviously, how are you kicking that off with? So obviously, that's not one that's going to be happening. At least I'm guessing that's not current. That's not current continuity, and I'm cool with that. Classic World's Finest stories with these two characters teaming up. Cool, I'm all in.
Yeah.
So let's see where this all goes. It's an interesting time to be a fan. I'm really enjoying this particular book and the idea of where DC's going. We got these next 2 months are pretty big ones with DC, where we're slowly building to what's coming in April, and I'm excited to see where DC's going. It's an interesting time. We think about what April is. April's leading into the summer. The summer's traditionally when big happenings occur in comics. It's going to be interesting to see how DC is, because Free Comic Book Day usually builds to something, right?
Yep.
So it's an interesting time that Justice League 75 happens in April. Free Comic Book Day is coming in May, and I'm hoping there's big stuff planned for this summer.
Now I can get out of here.
Our next discussion is The Flash number 779, Vengeance is Mine, Part 3. Jeremy Adams is the writer, Fernando Pasarin and Matt Ryan, Brent Peebles on art, Jeremiah Skipper, Peter Pantazis, and Jeremy Cox on colors. Letters are by Rob Lay, the cover by Brandon Peterson and Michael Atea, the variant cover by Todd Knock, the editor is Chris Rosa, and the senior editor is Paul Kaminsky. And apologies for any name butchery. I've been really enjoying this Flash series, and one of the things I think I've been enjoying the most about it has been not only, it's actually what I'm loving about the TV show Superman and Lois. I love the exploration of Wally and really digging the exploration of Wally and Linda and Wally as a superhero. But we're also getting some great exploration of the kids who I think have been handled sometimes really well in comics and have sometimes become these like background characters that like we've just been forced to do something with, if that makes any sense, where they haven't felt like an organic part of the book. They feel very organic to this book. Their story is very unique and interesting. And the struggle that the two kids are facing with regards to their powers, which we'll talk more about in this issue, is something that's very rich and interesting too, as we're seeing them mature and grow as characters. I really, really dig this series. I'm a big fan of The Flash, and this series has been really doing everything that I really enjoy about The Flash. What are your thoughts? Like, what is it? Are you digging this series? What are you digging about it, if you are?
Well, first off, I am digging this 100%. And I do like how they really have done the redemption of Wally West. Mm-hmm. You know, between the two of us, I was harder on him than you were. With killing people and just how, I saw it more as his fault. You're like, hey, it wasn't his fault. And then they later explained how it really wasn't his fault. It was one of those involuntary, accidental things that actually even the bad guys triggered. We saw that it was Zoom who actually really did trigger a lot of the power fluctuation in him, in the Speed Force that got all those people killed. And I was like, okay, I'm now liking the fact that we're getting a redemption of Wally told in a cool way, told in a cool story. You bring back the family, because that was something I really loved with Wally. Yeah. And that was, you think about it, that was one of his big problems and his trigger, that he remembered his family, but they were gone. They didn't come back. Well, now they're back. And you get this great family dynamic. I really do love the brother-sister relationship between these two. It is kind of, you like seeing that kind of interaction just with, the brother following the sister and making notes and this and all the little stuff that he's done in dealing with his sister has been absolutely wonderful. And then you add to it, you add Maxine. I'm like, oh man, why didn't I realize who that was originally? I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So now they got another superhero friend that they can have hanging out with them and dealing with. I was like, this for me has been just an absolute really joy, but it's not just, the fact that, Wally's cool and I love that they redemption, but they're taking their time and giving the kids, giving the wife, giving supporting cast their own personality, their own dynamic, their own, screen time. And that is something very essential, that you can't just focus on Wally. We've got some great Wally moments, and I'm really starting to love him as the Flash. I'm like, this is a really cool, Flash character. And again, it has that positive Flash energy. Flash fact, we always run towards the danger. West, they're like the West motto, we can take care of it. West always saves the day. Just that positive energy that even the kids are starting to show, that Wally has. It's one of those things that you need to have in the Flash. You need to have that positive energy. You need to have those dun-dun-dun, I'm the Flash, I will find a way kind of mindset and moments. And I really did love seeing that as this series is going on, especially in this issue. This issue had a lot of really cool Flash family, Flash moments, that true hero, dun-dun-dun moments. I loved it.
It's interesting how I think our differences in screen time with Wally, actually reading Wally, probably affected our viewpoint as well. Whereas I had lengthy runs of reading Wally West, where, Mark Waid's run, Jeff Johns' run, Grant Morrison's run, continued on. I mean, there was some really great quality runs of The Flash that I was reading as they were coming out. Whereas you came to The Flash a little later. Bart was actually your first real Flash, right? I mean,
yeah, Bart was my Flash. And Bart always was my Flash. I was like, no, Bart's my Flash, man. Bart's my Flash. And then when they had the whole story that brought back Barry, I was like, we don't need Barry. And then they started really going heavy into Barry. I'm like, Barry's cool. Okay, Barry's my Flash now.
Yeah.
And I completely latched on to Barry. Again, you go back to Blackest Night, with Barry Allen when he's in the police station. He's like, you tell him the Justice League has this. And it's just that moment of that pure confidence. Again, there's a reason the blue ring went to him. He was hope. And he inspires hope. And that was the thing. I'm like, man, this is something really cool with the Flash. And then I'm watching the TV series, and you see that positive hope, that positive energy, that hope. The Flash is always find a way kind of mindset. And I really started latching on to Barry, saying, Barry's cool, Barry's awesome, Barry's my Flash. And then we get the moments where we start bringing back Wally. I'm like, okay, you're all gung-ho on Wally. I'm like, okay, yeah, he seems kind of neat. Started reading some stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm seeing the family dynamic. And then he kills a bunch of people, like, oh. But now he's got the redemption. Now he's coming back. And again, you still see that positive energy. And I think that's, for me, is something I'm really loving about when I read The Flash. And Flash is one of the titles, by the way, I've been going back and reading older stuff, just because, I want to read more of The Flash. And that's a consistency that again, The Flash has run towards danger. The Flashes run into danger. They run into it. They run at it. And they always find a way. And that's always been a good, solid, mindset, and just that commonality of all the Flashes have it. Anytime there's a Flash, they always have that character. Part of it is because of the super speed, because they think faster. They can, they count on their speed to be able to react to the danger coming at them. So they feel they're safe to run right at it. I think that, for me, is a really cool hero kind of mindset to have. I personally could never be a Flash. I'm more of a Batman, kind of sulking in the shadows, picking my shot, and acting as a sniper. That would be my mind. That would be my mindset as a hero. But seeing the Flash, I would team up with the Flash. I would be the Flash's support fire. 100%, because if you got a Flash on your team, your odds of surviving have gone up. Just like if you got a Superman on your team, your odds are going up because they're always going to have that rescue, that hero mindset.
Yeah, he's one of the things that's really great about the Flash is, to your point, they stumble, and no pun intended, but they do keep getting back up, and they do keep moving towards that kind of idea of heading towards the light, right? They're the bright shining star of the hero universe, where they're accessible. They shake hands with people. They're in. It's kind of like what we with Superman. I'm using there's going to be things here that sound like puns, and I'm not intending to be puns, but Superman is kind of like this beacon where you look up to him and you want to be him, right? Yeah. It's like the shining example, where the Flash is more grounded. I know it sounds like a pun, but he really is. Like, you feel like the Flash is a guy you could see on the street and high five and say, "Hey, thanks, man." If you happen to you're not chasing him, but he happens to be standing there. He's accessible, and I've always liked that. My favorite parts of Wally's series in the years where he was courting Linda and all of that was the fact that they knew who he was in Central City and in Keystone City. He was this character in the dual cities that, they eventually knew who Wally West was, that Wally was the Flash. And that was a thing. And it worked. There's a different level of accessibility to him that makes him more a man of the people than the other heroes, but he's your guy that's like a fireman or a policeman that's trusted in the community, and you're like, that's my guy. He's gonna be there, and I like that about the Flash. I just love that concept to the character. You said something also that was interesting as far as reading older issues, and I think it's because the Flash is like a single title. I've always gone back and read old Flash stories too, just because I want more. They're usually epic stories. They've usually got they're building towards something. It's great to read where, the character's history has come from. And you're right, it's one of those characters where I tend to go back and read old Flash stories pretty much more than any other DC character, just because of the fact that, Batman, I would be inclined to read more Batman classic stories, and I do, from time to time I'll pick up favorite arcs or arcs that I haven't read, But I get so much Batman each month, and the whole Batman family, that I'm very satisfied with Batman. I get a lot of content that's Batman related, that's new. Whereas The Flash, it's one book. So if I want more, you're going back and grabbing more issues. And especially when I'm digging a series as much as I am right now with this one, it makes me want more afterwards. And the only way to get it is to go back to the older stuff and be able to reread either some classic favorites or some of the new material. And I'm with you. I'm kind of finding that there's things I like about all the ones that have donned the costume, and my mood tends to drive which one I go back and read.
Well, I don't remember. It was Wally, one of the older issues. And I don't remember who was writing, but the thing that caught me was him hanging out with the cops. Mm-hmm. And him having just that person, a very personal connection with the police officers. And I thought, man, that for me was. I remember when I was reading the issue, and that is what I wish all the heroes did. Because again, it's you're a vigilante. But again, as a citizen of the country, you have a right to stop. You do have a right to prevent somebody from committing a felony. So you do have the rights to do that, but you don't really have arrest authority. You don't have detain authority. You don't have that kind of. And the Flash working with the cops like that, I thought that was a really cool kind of just moment. It's. Superman has that same kind of vibe where I'd love to see just Superman hanging out with, a cop saying, hey, how you doing, man? Yeah, hey, thanks for the help. Oh, no problem. I'm here, buddy. I got your back kind of thing. And same thing, sometimes Batman has some of that relationship with some of the different detectives in Gotham. We've seen him have that, obviously, a connection with Jim Gordon between the two of them. But then there's other, Renee Montoya, he had a really good connection with sometimes. And there's, Bullock, Bullock had his moments where he was okay with the Bat family. You kind of like seeing the heroes and the police working together. Yeah. Because it adds, for me, an element of believability. Because if, in reality, in the real world, if you're a villain, if you're a guy who breaks into a store, you're caught by a guy dressed up as a bat and tied up and left bound and gagged for the cops, any lawyer worth anything could get you off on that, saying, hey, some weirdo dressed in a costume attacked my client, completely innocent. Where is this Batman? Where is this person who will testify in a court of law? Where is the actual legal process? And people could walk in theory for this. But when you start developing a heroes and police connection, you can kind of understand that the cops were there after the hero did their thing, and then the police officers can testify on what they saw. And in my head, I can see a whole trial playing out completely differently if there is this positive connection between them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's an interesting sort of relationship between them. You were talking earlier about Maxine being in this. Yeah. I feel so dumb on that one because I thought she might be a villain. I thought there might be some, she was buddying up with Wally's daughter, and I thought okay, she's leading her down a path, and at some point in time there's going to be some weird turn or some reveal about her or something like that. I didn't expect the reveal to be that she is not only in fact a hero, but one I happen to really like.
Well, I 100% thought she was a villain. And even the getting Iris to sneak out. I 100% thought, okay, she's getting her to sneak out, so she's going to be abducted. She's part of the ring, and I'm thinking all this kind of crazy stuff. How she's the actual villain of the story, and it's going to be they're fighting, and this is going to be creating of her new. This is going to be Iris's new super villain that she's going to have to deal with, and all that. I had all this huge storyline going on. This is Iris's Lex Luthor, kind of thinking in my head, and then when I realized. Oh, no. Oh, that's who she is. Oh, I literally smacked myself in the head saying, oh, this is even better. Now that she's got a partner, this is cool.
Yeah, and it's a character who you and I were both big fans of that series. Yes. And I'm so glad that this is something that I think good writers do where they look back at, DC lore and they go, okay, here's a character that has not been used in a while that really is of the should be of the right age, that it would be great to plug this character in and reignite this. And maybe at some point in time we'll get an Animal Man Flash team up, which I'd really like, because we haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
And I love that character. So this is really terrific when they do. And whether they do or they don't, it was neat to see these kids transported there. They recognized Dad was in trouble because of the fact that Jay was able to, Dad's got a problem. I need to go there. We've got to save him. The heroism of this kid, this is painful. He's able to tap into the Speed Force if his sister shares it with him, but it becomes painful for him. He went from having powers that he could use regularly to having that taken away and becoming in the background, having to watch his sister move forward and thrive, knowing that he was in the background, and became this kind of awkward kid, to then showing he's a hero at heart. Dad's in trouble. This is going to be painful for him. Give me the spark. Let's see what happens with it. I really loved seeing him step up like that. I'm like, wow, at that age to be able to do that. And he really did it in a way that a kid does, right? He's been very well written in this. I did not expect to be as focused on the kids as I am. And that's been gradual. And I've really enjoyed that they showed up on the scene and they're helping save Dad. And yeah. I mean, really are an integral part of this, where Wally's got to make the decision to go, Linda's going to kill me, but let's be honest, they're really effective. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that.
And I love the fact that he can recognize that they can't do it without Jay. Because even he's like, man, we got Jay, I can't let you do this. And I was like, hey, we can't do this without him. We need him. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I can do it. And I love, again, it's that gut check time of a hero. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a kid. He's stepping up. He's taking the pain. This is excruciating painful for him. But he's like, no, I've got to do this. And I love seeing that those hero moments out of him, where he's like, let's go. We got to do this. And even just the layout, of the team dynamic that they've got. They've got 3 kids and a villain, and the Flash, taking on Justice League Dark and all of Gemworld, and you love you love it when you've got these hero team ups and you got this hero group. You got the Flash family, you've got the Animal Man family, with Maxine there. Then you got a villain, all tied in, saying, "Okay, we got to work together," and it's against these unsurmountable odds. But it was just an absolute wonderful piece where Flash is like, "Okay, I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds head start. Cut me a hole, and I'll go in." And those moments were just some of the great hero moments. You see the kids fighting, and as it's 10, 9, getting ready, or doing the count up 1, 2, 3, up. But instead that countdown, getting ready for when the Flash is going to do his thing. But you still see the other heroes fighting. You see the other heroes stepping up. You see the kids fighting, watching each other's back. That, for me, was a really cool moment in the fight dynamic, that not only were they beating on the bad guys, but they had each other's back, helping each other out. Those are some really cool moments in this storytelling.
Did you ever read Power Pack from Marvel?
I believe so.
Okay, it was a group of kids, who gained superpowers. The reason why I'm referencing it in the era when Power Pack came up, I was really reading X-Men heavily. And it was a title that was launched by Marvel with introducing some new characters who had some powers. They had some cool costumes. It was kind of an interesting take. I read them for the first year that they were out, and I jumped off of them not because I didn't like the book. I loved the book, but it was an example of, Marvel was adding more X titles, and I was grabbing onto those. And I was also reading my DC books. I didn't have much budget to stretch out. So unfortunately, it had to be on the chopping block, not because of quality, but because of lack of budget. But I've always loved when you've got a team of kids with real, they feel like kids. And they've got that kind of dynamic. And you're seeing that here with these kids, where there's an idealism to kids. They look at the world a little differently, if that makes sense. When they're well written and they're written like they're really kids, you get that sense of hope, that sense of it's a positive vibe off of them. And there's something exciting when the kids boom in. I mean, you can't argue with the fact that when they come in, it adds just an upbeat vibe to this whole thing. it's a dangerous situation, but yet they both have powers and they're able to unleash. Iris is like, finally, she gets to like unleash her powers, and she's whipping around Detective Chimp in that tornado. And it's exciting. It's really, really cool to see Jay and Iris fight. Jay hit the demon. It was really, really cool to see him knock down Etrigan. And I really enjoyed seeing how that all played out. It was an interesting sort of story. I hope that we get to see Maxine and the kids continue to team up. And I liked how there was this focus on Wally and his big adventure. And you had this also going on at the same time, the kids in the background and that story being richly developed. Because when the stories converged, which I didn't see happening, I didn't see it leading to this. It was so satisfying that I'm like, oh my gosh. And the plan was all along for them to converge into this event and be a part of it. And how fun is it? This was fun. And I don't need this to be in every Wally story, but it certainly fits this one. And it's going to keep the kids a focal point for me. And I'm with you. Maxine needs to be a regular guest in the book. She needs to be a part of this. I really am enjoying the character.
Big time. And I 100% think she's going to be a regular in this. And we're not going to have it every time like this where the kids fight with Dad, but, fight alongside Dad. But they're going to I'm assuming they're going to have their own thread, their own story, and they're going to play out that way. And it's something I think that really these issues have done, where the creative team they've given us enough focus on Flash that we got a really good Flash story. They're giving us enough focus on the kids. We got a really good story with the kids, and then they mesh in together. And you look back to some of the past stories that this team has done, where they've really done that already, where they've given us some good focuses on the Flash family, but they're not taking away from telling a good Flash story. And that's the fine balance, and that's the balance that a good creative team can do really well. You think back to some of the great Superman stories that we've read that have been about the family that before was just Lois and Clark. And then once John comes in, they start doing some great stories with the three of them. Now Clark is out of the picture, and we're focusing on John and his life going on. It's, there's a really good way to handle a family element in the superhero stories. And they're doing great blending with this. I'm absolutely, again, Flash is a title right now that I am 100% loving, and I'm jumping to immediately. This has my true hero kind of moments in them that I absolutely love, and I'm still getting that from some good Superman stories and some good John Kent stories. But the Flash really does give you that moments, and I absolutely love just seeing him save the day here.
Yeah, I do too. It's the whole saving the day, and I like the idea too that he's teamed up with somebody who clearly is a villain that's operating for his own purposes and an opportunist, where the allegiance changes from like moment to moment based on, okay, I can take advantage of this and, I can take control and get power here, but then realizes the error of his ways. Now he's back into Team Flash. I liked that kind of natural flip-flop as well, where it's like, I don't know if I should trust you again, but I got no other choice. Flash has got to trust him out of convenience. It's where he can give a kind of power and also a knowledge bank that the Flash doesn't have. So Wally's kind of like, all right, God, we'll trust you again. I love that.
Helped out with that. And I like the fact that they did that, where she's was able to tap into a skunk-like creature nearby who has a superhuman sense of smell, and she's like, "Hey, the nose doesn't lie when it comes to deceit. He's telling the truth." And I love the fact that it wasn't just Wally saying, "Yeah, it makes more sense." They had, and again, one of the supporting characters added to the story. And again, it's kind of neat when they do that with Animal Man Power, with the Animal Man Power set. Yep. We're able to tap into different creatures. And again, throughout the fight, you see her tapping into different animals. And it's one of the neat things about that power set that I really do want to see her and Ira, working together, and throw Jay and the three of them doing stuff, on their own, just kind of their own hero stuff. And then we can add Buddy into the mix periodically and have an Animal Man Flash team up. There's so many things we could do that I want to see now.
We eventually see the scepter used to recontain Eclipso, which I thought was really cool. And then it led to this thing with the Spectre. And it was great to see that, where you get this idea of, the glaive is, being handed back over, and, he's pleased with me. And there's this hint of God, and I like how they kind of dance around it, like not really being descript, but the idea that this was all part of his plan, and he left him with this gift, this speed force. And Wally's got like this one opportunity to give his son this part of the speed force that Wally could have kept, but instead it's like, let me give this to you and give you back this gift of this thing that you truly want without the pain. As a way to cure his pain, but also give him back his powers. So, and this idea that maybe now his code name's going to be Surge. Yeah. And I thought that was just like way cool how it all worked out, because I wanted to see Jay out of this, be able to, because I'm like, wow, Jay is really neat in this. I want to see him continue on. And I would have been fine with him continuing on with Irie, and like this idea of every so often, if she needed to, she could give him a little bit of the power and he dealt with the pain. I like this resolution so much better, where it's like, no, we're going to get him a chance to see the two of them continue to grow and explore their powers. And I love that the ending is not what I expected.
No. And again, I'll tell you, just the moments between Flash and Spectre had me laughing. Yep. Because like you said, wait, please, as in, and you just see Wally just point to the air. He's like, yes. And then that other line, well, I'm glad he's pleased, but not to be a jerk. We could have used some help. Again, those are just great Wally moments. Those are just wonderful moments. And I agree with you. I like how Surge and everything in that. And then just that final sequence with Linda and running, and she taps into the Speed Force. Here's how I read that. Mm-hmm. I read that's not Linda actually tapping into it. I read she's pregnant and she's got a bun in the oven, and that's who's tapping into the Speed Force.
Really?
That's how I'm thinking is going on here.
What's making you think that?
Just a notion, in my head of how would she be able to tap into the Speed Force all of a sudden? What changed with her? And then the first thought that popped in my head is a baby.
Well, it's also that she gave birth to two of Wally's kids.
She did give birth to two of them, and by both children now having powers, maybe that could be the connection, and that could very easily. But that was something that popped. That was something that popped in my head. I'm like, I wonder if maybe the West family is growing.
Oh, who knows? Snargle Bargle.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I didn't get the idea she was pregnant, but well, here's the thing. I also, as you're saying it, I'm like, well, I don't really have anything to dispute that. Yeah. But there's something. Yeah, here's the thing.
This is 100% guess on my part, but it's a guess based on the notion I asked myself, what changed about her? Now, it could be the fact that both children now are fully connected to the Speed Force, and there's that full connection, and she's got a connection to him, or there could be something different about her, which could, to me, would say baby.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, too, the question is, how long has this been manifesting? Has it been manifesting longer than Linda realizes? Who knows?
Right.
Or is this something bigger going on? There's something. Here's the thing. What a great cliffhanger, because it leads to exactly what you're doing. And questions as far as where is this coming from, and what does it mean? And I love that. I love these kind of endings where Flash stories are at their best when they don't just end. This arc has ended, but it's already building to the next one, and the story is continuing. And you know that everything that you're reading is part of a larger story. I think that is always the Flash at its best. And I'm really glad to see that this writer's continuing on the rich tradition, because that's really what the Flash has always been about for me, has been like this ability for the book to just continue on with big, epic, ongoing stories. It's not about like isolated arcs where like, okay, this arc's done, now we're going to continue a brand new story that may or may not be connected to the one in the past. It's all connected. It's one big ongoing story, and each arc builds onto things that lead to the next one, and you're just as interested in the family dynamic and how they're growing as a family and their interactions with their supporting cast and their friends. Like Maxine in The Flash, you're very protective of that Maxine Baker because she's become a friend of Irie's now and Jay's. And you want to see this friendship continue to grow and see, what comes out of all of that. In my favorite issues with Wally West back in the day, it was his relationship with the Pied Piper. Like, a guy that you'd never expect to become really good friends with the Flash because it was one of his former villains. But they wound up having a really cool, great relationship that I thought was an interesting part of the overall story. And I think that's something that I'm glad to see continue to be a part of the Flash universe. I'm so thrilled that you're enjoying the Flash as much as I am, and it's gripped you for the same reasons. It's proof that it doesn't matter when you jump on to a book. If you connect with a book and the characters, everything has a jumping on point, and there's multiple jumping on points. You don't have to have read The Flash when I started. You didn't read Aquaman when I started. It's more of reading it at that point where the concept grabs you at a time where you're ready for it, and you hold on to it. And because your jump on points differently, the Flash who is your Flash it's kind of like when I talk about Doctor Who. Everyone talks about who is their first doctor, right?
Who's their doctor,
guy?
Yep.
Mine was Tom Baker, but if you didn't start with Tom Baker, yours could be, Christopher Eccleston from the new Launch series, or David Tennant, or, same thing. You've got a different Flash than I do, in that Bart was your starting point for the path. But I don't know that there's a right or wrong for that. There isn't, actually. It's more based on experience. It's such a good book. And I'm so glad that they made a good choice with a writer, because Joshua Williamson was a hard one to follow up. And I think that always has been consistently with the Flash. Mark Waid left. Who are you going to follow him up with? Well, they followed up with Jeff Johns. I mean, okay, we're home run here. It's been a character that's really enjoyed really solid writers continuing on the story arc. And I'm glad that this is continuing that tradition. Great book.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. You can also contact us through ragingbullets@gmail.com, which is our email address. We like hearing from you. If you go to the About Us section of our show website, that's how to connect to us via social media and gaming platforms. And we get a lot of contact from people that way as well. RagingBullets.com is our show website where you can find out details about the next episodes that are coming out. I actually just upgraded the hosting, and you'll notice there's behind the scenes some little tweaks that I'm going to be making on the website just to get everything back up and running again. But that's a sign that we're planning on sticking around, and that feeds into Twitter. It feeds into our Facebook fan page if you prefer to find out information that way. We're also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. And I want to thank all the people that post there and send us messages and just give us updates on content that's going around. It's the first place I check because people will curate content there that they're interested in talking about. So I want to thank everyone who continues to participate. It means a lot to me because it is my first destination. I literally check every day just to see if anybody's posted anything that I should be aware of. So I do appreciate that partnership because I don't mention enough, they really are partners behind the scenes of the show, just keeping us up to date and current. And thank you everybody who takes time to post things there and just post their comments. We are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Aquaman, the Becoming trade paperback, 50% off, only $9.99. And we have Flash, the Fastest Man Alive 3-issue limited series, 40% off, $3.59.
Over at InStockTrades.com, again, those top sellers. They've got the Flintstones, the deluxe edition hardcover, $49.99 regularly, 42% off, only $28.99. The Milestone Compendium, Volume 1 trade paperback, $59.99 regularly, 42% off, only $34.79. And The Flash by Jeff Johns. What an amazing run. The third volume of the Omnibus hardcover series, $99.99 regularly, 42% off, only $57.99. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show and a lot of other podcasts. our next episode. Jim, you and I are coming back. It's Batman week. We're going to be talking about the Batman. We're going to be spoilery, chatting about this brand new movie that's been released. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
it's right there.
Jim,
I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's not